Hello, thank you so much for tuning in to another Alpha News broadcast. Today, we're very fortunate to be joined by Senator Paul Gazelka, a gubernatorial candidate here in Minnesota, vying to replace Governor Walz. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Good to be back.
So we've been doing interviews with all the candidates post-debate. I recognize that the debate is a little old now, but I still want to go through and recap what we saw on stage that night. Sort of closing remarks, part two, what were your thoughts about what happened?
Well, I think it was a good debate. You had all the candidates there, and everybody got to see how they answered questions, what they really knew. And so in the end, I thought it was a good debate. There's been a number of straw polls now. I've won 2 out of 3, so we're doing all right.
Yeah, very good, very good. One of the main features of that debate that stood out in many people's minds was a little bit of sparring between you and Dr. Jensen. Would you like to comment on the dynamic that evolved on stage?
Well, and also Neil Shaw. I got poked at just about everybody. And I think, frankly, after I won the delegate straw poll, I became the front runner, and so people not afraid to hit me a lot more. But that's the big leagues. You got to be able to take hits. I've been a fighter the whole time that I've been the leader of the Senate, and this was just more of that, and I hit back as well. I mean, you're in the arena. If you can't take a punch from these people, then certainly when you have to go against Tim Walz, you're not going to be ready. And I'm ready. I'm battle ready.
I noticed that you mentioned the delegates, how you won the delegate straw poll. What's your delegate recruitment strategy look like right now?
So we reach out to every single person that's a delegate now, and then come February 1st, there'll probably be some new delegates, and we're going to build relationships with them. I want to make sure that they know who I am, that I'm not just a politician, but that I've been a business owner my whole life, having an insurance agency, being a manager, being an executive. They need to know that I'm a part-time citizen legislator, but I know how to govern, I know how to fight against 2 Democrat governors, and I know how to win. And so that's the message that I'll take to them, and then paint a direction of where Minnesota needs to go now. Under Tim Walz, we are totally off the rails, and I'm going to get us back.
Absolutely. Continuing down this discussion of the debate, that first question garnered national headlines. I saw CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, all these media outlets pounced after there was some discussion of the election integrity in 2020. What are your thoughts on that first question and the resulting social media fallout?
So I'm not spending a lot of time looking backwards. I wanted Donald Trump to win. We got knocked off the horse. I'm back up on the horse. My responsibility was Minnesota and keeping the Senate. We won the Senate. We've won now 3 out of the last 4 times. And that's where I'm going to be. I'm moving towards how do we remove Tim Walz from office. People are concerned that the elections aren't fair, and I get that. I've said that I don't think the elections were fair, but we can win. We have to have more election judges there. They had 20,000 election judges in Minnesota. We had 3,000. We need way more election judges. But the fact that we won in the Senate should tell people we can win. I know how to win, and that's what people are looking for.
It seems like this would not be one of your front-runner issues carried into a contest between you and Governor Walz.
No, the 3 issues I think people are passionate about in Minnesota, not just Republicans, but also the independent and even Democrats. The first one is public safety. People do not feel safe. I mean, virtually every day a carjacking, and it's people with guns. Oftentimes they're under 18. They need to go to jail. Maybe it's kids' jail, but they need to go to jail, right?
Sure.
And so that's one of the biggest issues. The second one, without a doubt, is the economy, that inflation is eating up everybody's wealth. And the third one is education. If you're in Minneapolis and St. Paul and you're a minority student, you're not getting the best education you could. And Republicans are offering more choices for them. And for the whole state, if you're getting educated and you don't know you're citizens of the greatest country in the world, and all they've talked about is the flaws of America, we've made a mistake. So people know that we need to do better in education, and Republicans have the answer.
Yeah. How do you think the Republican Party has done historically on the education issue? Because it seems, at least in my view, something that's largely owned by the Democrats.
I think that's a good point. They've always said that they are the party of education, but it doesn't feel like that this time. This feels like the first time that I think Republicans get that education's important. And when we're not doing well compared to places like Mississippi, when our minority students compared to other minority students around the country are in the bottom, then we know that we're not this Minnesota miracle anymore. And Republicans have been saying we need more choices for our kids. If our public schools are failing, they have to have the ability to go somewhere else. We're the ones that have been promoting that. We did opportunity scholarships 3 years ago that the governor would not sign. We did education savings.
Why not? Why didn't he want to sign that?
Because he's in line with the teachers union, and they refuse any reform, even if we know it works. And so we're going to keep pushing that. But as governor, my expectation is we win the Senate again and win the House back. We're going to do real education reform and help some of these minority kids really thrive.
Sure, sure. Would one of the primary tools there be school choice, or are there other avenues available?
School choice is the big issue, and we want public schools to be successful. That's where about 85% of the kids go to school. But if they refuse to change, then those kids need to have other options, parochial schools, charter schools, homeschool, whatever the parents and those kids want to do, we've got to help them be successful. Right now, they're not, and they need to be.
Yeah. To borrow a phrase from the White House, I want to circle back on something you said about crime a second ago. You're not alone in this assessment that prosecutors aren't doing their jobs in a lot of cases. I know State Senator, I want to say Mark Curran, issued a statement saying that he'd be interested in sponsoring legislation to help these Minneapolis prosecutors do their jobs. As governor, what are your options there? Because people are looking for a solution.
As governor, I have a ton of options. First of all, I can use the highway patrol to come and help take the streets back in Minnesota. I can push for more resources for Hennepin and Ramsey County Sheriff's Departments. They can move in there. But frankly, we need to take our streets back. Whatever means possible is what we need to do. The police need more resources, without a doubt. We can have minimum sentencing so that prosecutors can't just let somebody go. If you do the crime, you've got to pay the time. And right now, they're not. And that message is the message that came from Tim Walz, that you don't, he's not going to stand in the way. He's not putting the hammer down. And frankly, we have to take our streets back. And without a doubt, I mean, elderly people absolutely feel vulnerable that they're going to be mugged or carjacked. One of our volunteers was near the Capitol, between the Senate and the Capitol. There's a light rail. And somebody came off the light rail, young person with a gun. They were far enough away that they could jaywalk across the street and get away. But that's not Minneapolis and St. Paul that anybody wants. We're going to take our streets back.
That's a well-lit area.
Yeah.
I've been to that metro station.
Broad daylight, the carjackings left and right, first St. Louis Park and then Edina. I mean, it's just ongoing. Minneapolis has tied for the highest murder rates ever. St. Paul, highest murder rates ever. Carjacking off the charts. And this is because of Democrat policies. And Republicans know what to do. We just need to have the opportunity to do it. As governor, I will lead.
Of course, when people are getting carjacked, shot, 80-year-old women are getting mugged in the streets, it's difficult to think about anything else. But are there issues that you think aren't getting the attention they deserve that you would choose to focus on as governor?
Well, that will be the number one issue and responsibility as governor. People need to know that they're safe. You know, you think about a little kid in the backyard jumping on a trampoline, shot and killed. That should never be the norm in Minneapolis and St. Paul. The economy is another big issue, and a big part of it, without a doubt, is Biden and the excessive spending that has created inflation, where a big bag of lettuce can be as much as $6 or $7 a bag. Think about that. Or gas could get to $4 a gallon. That's an issue that we have to pay attention to. And in Minnesota, what we can do is work on the regulations and taxation of small businesses in Minnesota. That's probably the biggest thing we can do here. And then find ways to get more people into the workforce, because we have a workforce shortage everywhere. Those are things we can control here that I will lead on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Pivoting now to how you're going to become the nominated candidate, the Republican candidate. There's been some fighting between you and another candidate who recently attacked some statements you've made in a book you authored, and I'm just wondering if you'd like to make a statement or respond to that at all.
Yeah, I wrote a book before I was ever in politics. I didn't start as a legislator till my mid-40s. My wife and I were very active, still are active.
What was that decision like to become a legislator?
You know, I was asked to be the legislator. So I was running my business. My wife and I do a lot of volunteer ministry, and out of the blue, the representative called me and said he had a serious illness. He wasn't going to run.
Really?
Would I run?
I didn't know that.
And I've never, ever been involved. You know, I've just been running a business and raising a family, that kind of stuff. And so,
who was the representative?
Dale Walz. He was a Baxter chief of police. He ran. Like I said, he had a serious illness and said he's not going to run again. And so But I'd written a book in that time frame, just a Christian living book, and it's 20 years ago. Most of it was written. I've grown a lot from that time period. I think the biggest difference between then and now is I'm just more grace-filled. Being a legislator, having to work with people that from all walks of life has really, really been interesting, and it forces you to grow. But I've always been a person of deep faith, and the book was meant to help people, and that's what I tried to do in the book.
Sure. Tell us more about your time as a minister, because this is an element of your character that I'm not tremendously familiar with.
Well, I graduated from a Christian college, Oral Roberts University, with a business degree, and I thought that I maybe would go into ministry. And my wife and I were youth pastors in our 20s. I was worked with as a big brother for a guy that's now 45 and married, and saw the fruit of that. And we did marriage ministry together, my wife and I. I was chairman of a Christian school board up in Bemidji. So just as part of our life, we wanted to give back to our community in different ways, and so that was part of who we are. And so now we even now still occasionally volunteer at Teen Challenge up in the Brainerd area, because we want to help people. It's about loving and helping people. As governor, people should look, that's my character, but as governor they should look at what have I done the last 5 years as leader of the Senate, because that's how I would govern. And it is figuring out how to build bridges where you have to build bridges and pass a budget, because people say, well, why don't you just shut down the government? And I say, well, no, that wouldn't be good for Minnesota. But I've governed the last 5 years showing people what kind of leader I would be, and that's the kind of leader I would be as governor.
Can you expand on that? Because people do always ask, why didn't you shut down the government? Why didn't you, metaphorically hold the baseball bat to the left and force them into compliance?
Yeah, and some people do ask that. And, we never raised taxes. In fact, we almost always lowered taxes, and we stopped all of the progressive agenda with a one-vote majority. But shutting down the government now would mean that we wouldn't have funded, for example, the highway patrol. We would have defunded the police. We wouldn't have funded veterans' homes or nursing homes, or the government helps with Teen Challenge, or all of the things that people count on the government for. As of 2017, the court said they wouldn't fund anything anymore. Prior shutdowns, they funded 80% of it. So now it was about, this would hurt the people of Minnesota, not the government. And to end session, I said, look, to end session, we must get rid of the governor's emergency powers. That was my one requirement, is emergency powers must end. And so the only bill that I attached that to end emergency powers was not funding the governor, the legislative branch, and that was how I put it. I didn't want to hurt the people, but we had to figure it out. And I won the day on that one. It's about standing up and fighting for the things that you believe in, but you also in government have to collaborate if you're divided government. We're the only divided government in the whole country, and yet we were able to figure out how to do it, not raise taxes, and protect all of the core issues that Republicans care about.
What was the decision-making process when you took that approach? Were the other Republicans in the Senate on your side there, or was there some cajoling?
Well, keeping 34 people together on every issue is almost like a miracle. The fact that we stayed together, there were times, and that's why you hear me talking about Senator Jensen on some of those cases, but the fact that we were able to stay together didn't mean that we didn't have intense conversations. We had a lot of those, but in the end, we figured out how to stay together. I was able to keep our team together so that the end product, like 3 years ago, we got the first middle-class income tax cut in 20 years against Tim Walz. We got ag property tax relief and small business property tax relief. So we really accomplished some of the key things. But I want House, Senate, Governor for Republicans. We've not had that in over 50 years. And if you don't have all three, it's almost a stalemate. It's amazing we got some of the tax relief we did. But having all three will end emergency powers as we've seen them. They were abused like I've never seen before. We will get photo ID or voter ID done so people know their elections were fair. We will do massive tax increases, multi-billion dollar tax reductions is what we'll have. One of the things I've said regularly is we'll get rid of Social Security income tax. We're one of a handful of states that still does it, and so people retire and they leave our state. We want them to stay. And we'll do a lot more than that. We'll talk about a middle-class income tax cut or other things. But the number one priority for me on that one is Social Security income tax.
Of course, of course. Speaking of taxes, of course, there's a massive surplus right now, over $7 billion. What's your assessment on how we ended up with that big surplus? And should we take measures in the future to reduce the surplus? Or what does this mean for what legislation needs to be passed?
There was almost $20 billion of extra federal stimulus money that came into Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
And so that, of course, was going to generate more spending and more taxes, more revenue coming in. That was part of it. But the fact is, we have more money collected than we need to have.
Yeah.
And that tells us that we need a serious, permanent tax reduction.
So it is a systemic problem. It's not just like a one-off COVID fluke that we have all this extra money.
Part of it's federal stimulus. Part of it is that we spent less because of COVID.
Right.
But really, we're in the top 5 tax states in the country.
It's true.
How about we get out of the top 10, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it's not just the $7.7 billion surplus. The reserves are totally full. That's over $2 billion, almost $3 billion. Mm-hmm. And we didn't spend all the federal stimulus money because there was nothing I wanted to spend it on. Mm-hmm. So we have more than $10 billion. So a multi-billion-dollar tax cut is absolutely something that we need to do. I'm going to advocate for it this year. The governor, Tim Walz, is going to want to spend the money. And no, we shouldn't spend half and some tax relief. We have to have massive tax reductions, and that's what I'll push for this year.
Sure, sure. So far in the campaign, you've been working to differentiate yourself from the other Republicans. Should you become the nominee and enter a contest with Governor Walz, what would be sort of your main attack issues on him? How would you appeal to those moderate voters?
Yeah, and first of all, for the other candidates, nobody else has got the experience that I have governing against 2 Democrat governors, bringing the fight to the Democrats. That nobody else has that experience. It's a $50 billion budget, and I've been the one in the trenches fighting. So when the other candidates say they'll do this or that, we have no idea what they'll do. They've never been under that pressure. It's a tremendous amount of pressure, and nobody's won back-to-back majorities in the Senate. We've shown how to win. But against Tim Walz, it is public safety. He is the one that really failed to act over a series of years now, and actually made room for the protesters that he called protesters that were actually criminals. When you're damaging buildings and doing all the things that they were doing, they needed to be stopped, and they weren't stopped for 6 days.
Yeah.
And then it's just been this ongoing lack of action that I will take that fight to him. We have to take our streets back. It means we need more police, and I'm thankful that the police have been endorsing me or giving me their Legislator of the Year award. They haven't done that for anybody else, but they know that I'm the one that's standing up for them because they're the ones that are going to take our streets back. That's the number one issue that I think Tim Walz really dropped the ball on. Education, he refuses the reforms we talk about, and I haven't heard him talk about, as governor, I'll tell you that I would stop the change of the history standards that will happen just after the next race, next governor's race. They don't want to talk about George Washington, World War I, World War II, the Holocaust. Enough of that stuff. We need to have our history as it is, the good and the bad. And then the economy, he constantly goes after small businesses with too many regulations that are driving them out of the state, or taxes that also drive them out of the state. I'm going to have the opposite approach to our small businesses. I want to make sure that they know that I'm courting them to come be part of Minnesota and be part of this great state, help us make be even better, and that will be my approach to the business owners.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. As governor, you mentioned that reaching across the aisle and forging these bridges would be a priority of yours. Minnesota's a deeply divided state. What's your plan for accomplishing that?
Well, I've had to do it the last 5 years under divided government, and so I know how to collaborate to build a budget that works for everyone. But I'm actually aiming for House, Senate, Governor in Republican hands.
Right.
You still have to work together, but it's a lot different, right?
What do you think the odds are that we accomplish that?
I believe if we win Governor, then we win House and Senate. That's why I gave up my role as leader of the Senate for the last 5 years. I could have remained. Other leaders in the past have done that, running for governor, but they need to win, and the House needs to win. But the House only lost by 4 seats and a total of 600 votes. Now we've got range Democrats that I recruited. Democrat senators are with us, so we should keep our majority. and winning the governorship means we won all three, then we can do all of the things that the Senate has been doing.
Yeah.
Now they become law, and people get excited about Minnesota.
Yeah, I would definitely be excited to see that also.
Yep.
Turning back a little bit to the primaries, some of the more populist elements of the party have criticized you as an establishment candidate. Of course, we've gone over what you accomplished when you were working within the establishment, but how do you respond to that criticism, and how do you court those elements of our party?
Yeah, I think it's a character of me that's not accurate. I'm experienced, which I think you absolutely have to have if you're going to govern. We've only had one governor that had zero political experience. That was Ventura, and I don't think anybody thinks he did a good job,
No.
right?
No.
So I didn't even get into politics till my mid-40s. I've always kept my insurance agency, so I wanted to make sure that I always had my pulse on local community living. And so that's a skill set that I bring. To say I'm an establishment person, I don't think it's fair. I just have the experience that you need to actually govern, and I've proven how I'm going to govern. I treat people fairly. I treat people the way I want to be treated, but I drive a conservative agenda that people, I think, in the end, really like, including the moderates.
Sure, sure. What's your ground game looking like right now? What is the day-to-day life in your campaign?
So through the end of the year, the two things we wanted to do was raise a lot of money, and our goal was, we started in September 8th. We said, let's raise more than $500,000 by the end of the year. We surpassed that goal. And let's win the straw poll in September among the high leadership level delegates of the state party. And we won that almost 2-1 against any of our other competitors. So now we're moving forward, continue to raise money, talk to delegates both and try to get new delegates out. And then we go to a lot of different events, Chamber of Commerce events, police events. I was up at a blue-collar union meeting up on the range, one of the taconite mines.
Yeah.
I was the first Republican that they let come into their meeting.
Yeah.
And you could tell that they wanted me. They didn't want Walz, because Walz and his leadership team sued the taconite industry. The Democrat state party said we don't want any copper nickel mining. Well, I'm from Virginia, Minnesota. That's where I went to high school. And mining is a part of the way of life up there. And if we're going to need those resources worldwide, let's do them here. Let's have the jobs here. We know that we're going to take care of the environment better here than any other place. But so it was exciting that they let me in there, and that's what I've been finding everywhere. I talked to a black pastor in Minneapolis. I think it was the third visit, and he said, "You're the first Republican leader in my church in 25 years." I thought, shame on us. Why weren't we there? But the second thing he said is, I've been a Democrat, but if you can show me you can make a difference, I can change. And that's the mood that I think we see, and what our campaign sees is there are people that haven't been part of the Republican Party that want to. They're just looking for somebody that could lead them in the direction they want to go, and God willing, that's going to be me.
What's next for the campaign? What areas of the state or what areas politically do you look to target more as things progress?
Well, we're going everywhere.
Sure.
I mean, we have a journey through the Northland all the way. I think eventually it'd end up in International Falls within the next month or so. But we really travel almost every day, everywhere. And public safety is the issue that now that I'm going to be going back as a state senator for another one last session through February 1st through the end of May, we need to get a handle on some of the things that are happening.
And that's an issue in the rural communities too, from what I understand, even though we don't always talk about it so much on the news. Am I right about that? It's a problem?
It is, but nothing like the Twin Cities area.
Okay.
Certainly Rochester is another area that you see some of that.
Yeah.
The carjackings are nothing like, I still often don't lock my door up north. I still feel very safe there.
Yeah.
But how, the minimum sentencing, the fact that the prosecutors are somehow not giving the sentences that they should, and the judges are working with them to find solution or conclusions that I just think are wrong. And so we got to help them, and if that takes legislation to get us there, we'll do that too.
Absolutely. Should you not become the nominee, would you consider continuing to run against Walz unendorsed?
No. I've always said that I will support the endorsement process among Republicans. I hope the rest of the candidates do that as well. It only weakens our opportunity to beat Tim Walz in the end. We've got to turn our energy towards what he's doing rather than just each other. And that's part of the process now. I mean, like I said, I got a lot of pot shots at the event that the Minnesota Family Council and Alpha News put on, but that's just because I'm the front runner. But in the end, we've got to turn our focus towards Tim Walz and what Democrats are doing. And my intention is to lead that fight, but if I'm not endorsed, then I'm out. I'll help whoever else is there.
Sure, sure. Speaking of the pot shots, I've noticed that you've offered some responses, but you don't get super mired in it. I assume that's intentional?
Well, it is. I mean, and we'll see if I have to do some more pot shots at some of the other guys. But there's plenty of things that I could talk about. Sure. But I really want to talk about, the vision for what I have for Minnesota, where we're going, the issues that we've talked about here today. Minnesota people want their state back. That's really what it is. And so I'm going to try to focus on that. But once in a while you got to take a lot of punches. Yeah. Once in a while you got to punch back.
Absolutely. One of my last questions here, moving forward, what are the next key metrics you want to hit? You mentioned that you had fundraising goals, you had straw poll goals. What other gates are you looking to clear as we move forward?
We want to get a bunch of people out as new delegates. There's a lot of people that have never done this before.
Could you explain that? If somebody wants to become a delegate, how would they go about doing that? It's very confusing.
Yeah, so come February 1st, caucus meetings or local meetings across the state happen, Republican and Democrat. The Secretary of State keeps a record of where all the meetings are going to be. We'll have all of the locations if people want to look on our site. It's Gazelka.com. And you simply show up with a bunch of your neighbors in your local communities and you say, I want to be a delegate. Well, on the Republican side, it's those delegates that are eventually going to determine who the Republicans have as their governor candidate. There's that I'm aware of, the only Republican who never got endorsed that won a primary was Arnie Carlson when he was governor, did not get endorsed, and he won the primary. Other than that, if you're not endorsed, you don't win the primary, which is why I'll honor it, because I don't want to weaken the final candidate. Hopefully it's me, but and I hope, like I said, I hope everybody honors that. But February 1st is the day.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. If people want to get involved with your campaign, you mentioned your website. What other resources exist?
That's the best way to go. Just go to Gazelka.com because that has all of our contact information there. We'll reach out to you. We want an army of people helping us. That's how you win. It's never just about one person. It's about a team working together. We have a great team, young and old, metro, rural, that we want you to be part of our team. So don't be afraid to go to Gazelka.com and say, hey, I want to be a delegate. I want to help you. I want to donate to you. We need to raise millions of dollars, not $500,000. And so that's another big part of what we have to do to win. But to win, we need the team working together. We need to stay focused on the issues that we know that we win on. And it's not just about conservative Republicans. We have to have moderates and some independents and some Democrats. But I see that we have those kinds of people that are saying, I'm sick and tired. I would literally in my apartment building today, I ran into one of the maintenance workers and he said he'd voted for Obama.
Yeah, yeah.
But he said, look, I have had it. Public safety was one of the big issues that he was concerned about, and he knew that it was Democrat leadership that had caused this. And so I gave him my card, and I believe he will support me. He's going to be Republican. Yeah. That much I know.
Huh. So people are properly realizing the Democrats are the cause of the public safety breakdown. You don't have to convince them of that.
Well, we will have to, but more and more get it. I had somebody go onto our website from Minneapolis, voted Democrat, but just said, look, we don't feel safe. Our whole neighborhood, carjackings here, muggings over here, and we blame the Democrats. And so we see what you're talking about. We like what you're saying.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Anything you'd like to leave our viewers with before you wrap?
No, I'm glad that you're listening. There's 6 candidates, or maybe another one that jumps in, but just know that I don't know anybody else that has the experience that I have. They call it part of the swamp. I say, look, you have to have some experience to govern this big budget, and if you're going to clean up the government, frankly, you have to know where to look. And so that experience that I have is really important, but also my business background. I when I was a management and an executive, I had helped reorganize the major company that I was working for, and frankly, that's what I'm going to need when we're reorganizing Minnesota. We have a lot of work to do, but you also need somebody that knows how to raise money and knows how to win. We want to win. Republicans want to win. It's high time that we win, and that's how we can really turn this state around. And so I'm asking for your help, but I'm just taking the question to say that and just ask the audience, come help us.
Of course. Senator, thanks for being with us.
Good to be here.